Um, let's talk about mothers. How many of you have met hugging saint Amma? 1, 2, 3, 4. Put your hand up again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I would like to first talk about Amma. Amritananda Mai Devi is her official name. Amritananda, which is like a mother of blissful nectar. And well, the reason why I want to talk about Amma a little bit, it's an introduction to talking of Yeshe Tsogyal, who is the Dharma mother, the Guru mother in Pemako Tantra. But I have mentioned hugging Saint Amma many times because she is the only Mahasiddha I have met in the physical. And as you know, I've spoken openly about meeting many other Mahasiddhas in non-physical, but she's the only one who I've met in physical many times since 2003. And perhaps I could speak my own experiences with her and how she has been very helpful and how she is kind of relevant to my understanding of Mahasiddhahood, Buddhahood, liberation, and that of course affects, my own practice as well as my teaching and, the path that we all practice. So she actually, even though, Amma isn't, we don't practice Guru Yoga with Ammachi, and she is not part of the Mahasiddha family. She has been very supportive and understanding also to what I do in my Dharma work. And she has expressed that physically when I've met her. But I'll start from the beginning. So I mentioned yesterday, and you might have heard me say that, I was introduced to meditation when I was a little boy through my judo teacher. And before that, I had been, having these spontaneous meditation sessions on my own, sitting on the bedside when because there was anguish and suffering in my family and relatives. So I used to spontaneously meditate when I was a little boy, and then many of these masters of Mahasiddha family, came to console me with their presence, and that was very meaningful. So that was like my early childhood, and as a teenager, I started going to different meditation groups that were kind of hard to find in 90s, still in Helsinki. Finnish Dharma scene is still good 30, 40, 50 years behind the rest of the world. So, still in the 90s, 25 years ago, it was 20, 30 years ago, it was really not developed. But nevertheless, I was able to find few groups and went to those meditation groups. But it wasn't until early 2003 when it really clicked. Karma ripened in the sense that, I was able to connect with Zen Buddhist meditation really strongly, and I started practicing, as you know, a lot. And then the same year, it was probably autumn of 2003, I met Ammachi the first time in Helsinki. And ever since then, I have met her probably every year, actually. So 2003, I was 24 years old, and um, I was a Zen Buddhist practitioner, still wet behind the ears, Zen Buddhist at that point, and I don't remember like anything special about that first time, except that I received her hug, her darshan. Darshan means, I sometimes use the word darshan, which is a Sanskrit word which means to, is it behold the guru in English? Like that you have a opportunity to see and meet the guru. That's the meaning of darshan. So, if you go to Amma events nowadays, they call it something else. They just might call it like Ammas embrace or Ammas hug, but they used to call it darshan back in those days. And darshan is a used word in uh, Dharmic literature um, from India in Hinduism, Buddhism, so it's a common word. But I just remember from the first hug, I remember like, well, first of all, the presence in that space. The event was held in a cable factory, this old, really big factory space in Helsinki, now in cultural use and then in cultural use. And I remember this immense presence in that space. Mahasiddha, um, with all her, Amma is very short. So she's like a head shorter than I am, but she's quite, heavy built and is easy to approach in that sense because she's very motherly. She's very easy to approach, and her energy is really disarming, completely disarming in the sense that she has that feel of motherness to her. And so I remember feeling and recognizing that energetic feel in there. And I think the first event lasted for 2 days, like they still usually do. And I think I did go on both days, but I didn't stay that long, like maybe just 1 or 2 hours. Hung out a little, had a cup of chai, ate some cake, and then had a hug and meditated some in the chairs. And that was the first. But I do remember that her darshan, her hug did give me an introduction to the nature of mind, which happens to, it happens to everybody who goes and hugs her. And the last time I heard, she's been doing that since, I don't know, mid-80s or something, going to different countries of the world. I think her first visit to United States was like 86 or 87. And the last time I heard, she had hugged, given a darshan for over 35 million people. And I remember this documentary of, what's the British BBC documentarist, Louis Theroux. Louis Theroux, in one of his documentaries, he visited different holy people, spiritual people, and he also received a hug in the documentary from her. And well, you can watch the documentary and see how his demeanor, how his look, how his outlook changes, before and after. It's obvious. And I've seen this throughout the years. I've spent hundreds of hours in Amma's presence. It might be 1,000 hours. I've really kind of taken advantage of that living pointer of the natural state, and really studied it in all the possible ways I could. I've studied her presence throughout the years as I've developed. I've compared my own mind and hers, and also paid attention if her presence feels different this year than it felt last year. I've really kind of how do you say, like, uh, really, used that opportunity. Um, so 2003 was the first time, and then 2004 and 5 I was in Japan, and then I think that actually the next, I'm not sure if I went in autumn 2005 or if she didn't come to Finland 2005, but I did. Then I met my first wife in January 2006, and she was an Amma devotee. She had known Amma since '98, since Amma came the first time to Finland, and then when Amma came to Finland in 2006 in autumn, September or October, I was already eagerly waiting to see her again. And that second or third time in 2006, I asked a mantra initiation from her and got it. Uh, she whispered, like she still does, she still gives mantra initiations according to the deity or guru that the person feels um, connected with. If you want to say Jesus's mantra, for example, or uh, I don't know, Shiva's mantra or Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra, she gives an empowerment for that Jesus or Shiva or Shakyamuni Buddha, whichever deity or guru you feel like asking an empowerment for. And or of course it can also be her. So I got it in 2006 and was chanting that mantra a lot before 2 months later. That autumn 2006, I got really interested in Kriya Yoga and Tantric practice in general after 4 years of hitting my head with Zen practices, banging my head to the wall and not getting anywhere really. And then I got that mantra from Amma, used it a lot, but then in December 2006 got my first Kriya Yoga initiation, and then that kind of took its own, like an opened a route for me that was, something that I simply just followed it. So there was a moment when I kind of considered myself uh, a student or a disciple or a follower of Amma, but then my karma just took its own way, and so I don't consider myself her student or follower of her practices or anything like that. But I also did learn she has like a set of tantric exercises called I am meditation. I am meditation. Simple, some simple physical exercises, and then some visualizations and breathing practices. I've also spent time in her ashram in southern India on 2 occasions. First, 2 months with my first wife in 2009, 2010. And that time, I had already received teachings from non-physical Mahasiddhas. And it is typical that when you go to her ashram, which is a really big place, it's like a small city, really. Big buildings, shops, restaurants, it's a really big place. And it's typical that one is expected to do some volunteer work there to, help keep the whole thing going on. And I had already learned from Babaji and others some practices and teachings, and I asked Amma when I met her in darshan there, I asked if I could give yogic healings, these mantra healings, as my volunteer work, offer it to the visitors in the ashram, and in that way, ask a little money for it so that the money goes to the ashram. And she said that she gave her blessing, and that's what I did for those 2 months. So I did yogic healing that I had learned from Babaji and Tirumular. Um, then before that and after that, that was 2009-10, I've met her in Finland. I've gone to see her in Germany a few times, in Munich, which is the reason why I've had interest towards perhaps moving to Munich, because I really like the city, I really like the place. Carl and I, we visited Munich soon 2 years ago to check out the place, if it would be a good place to establish Pemako Center. And then the second time I went to her ashram was when we already had, I think, one child with my second wife. And then I had asked Amma if it was kind of a time for Pemako that not much was happening. So this was before, when Dharma Mind from UK and Ireland joined Pemako. So, and things were really slow, and I wasn't satisfied with it in Finland because things just weren't really taking fire. Things were kind of stalling or plateauing. So I asked Amma when she came to Finland that if our family could go and live in her ashram in India for a while, and she said, and yes, you're welcome. And then maybe 1 or 2 years after that, I went there to ask her if I could give guidances to awakening as my volunteer work. And she said that, no, we don't do practices like that here. And that's one of the points what I don't really understand, but I don't really want to give attention to that. But, obviously we didn't move there because it wasn't like I didn't feel conflicted with it. Didn't make me question her authenticity as a master. Probably because by then I had really spent many hundreds of hours in her presence and had received personally being hugged by her many times. So it didn't like make me confused about her, but I still I don't understand why she said that, though in some way I can understand why she didn't want anybody to teach awakening in her place, but you know, um, that's what happened anyway. And so we didn't move there. And then the last time I met her was a little over 1 year ago in December in close to Helsinki again. So her as a Mahasiddha. This week we have been enjoying the immense blessings and empowerments from both Buddhist Mahasiddhas as well as Hindu Mahasiddhas. And I think that to me it's common sense that full liberation, full enlightenment can be achieved in different ways. But I think that many Buddhists have, see it completely different way. It's common for Buddhists to think that only emptiness philosophy leads to Buddhahood, and that no other philosophies, no other views can lead to Buddhahood or full enlightenment as it's understood in Buddhism. In my experience, that is not exactly right. And something that, even though this week also, we've been practicing and talking about the difference between heavenly states, exalted state, cosmic consciousness, oneness states, and then recognition of the natural state. I would just like to say that people are not stupid. And especially, when somebody practices yogic practices, be they any, if there is a need to stop dualistic confusion, that sets their energy, their karma towards full liberation, full enlightenment, Mahasiddhahood, Buddhahood. So when I say that people aren't stupid, is in reference to many Mahasiddhas from Hindu tradition, Taoist tradition, Christian tradition, after Jesus. So I think it's kind of an arrogant underestimation of the common sense and intelligence of humanity in general, that Buddhahood couldn't be attained except through Buddhist practices and Buddhist view. So I started Guru Yoga practice in 2006 when I learned Kriya Yoga. I practiced Guru Yoga with Babaji pretty much non-stop for 2 years until Tirumular came into the picture. And then also with Jesus a lot. Those were the 3 Mahasiddhas who I worked with until 2013-14. So we still have few practitioners from those days, and we really used to practice Guru Yoga with Jesus, Babaji and Tirumular, really yanking it out like we have this week with all the gurus, really being blown out from these blessings. And it was those daily experiences, darshans from non-physical Mahasiddhas that I always, when meeting Amma, I compared. And that was the excellent thing that I could do, because she was physically there. I'm watching at her. I'm feeling her energy. Ammas events used to be a lot more smaller than they are today. But still, for example, the event in Finland last year, for example, it was relatively small. So I could just go to the stage and sit 2 meters from her for as long as I wanted. And I did again. So, having someone who is Mahasiddha with her, I don't want to be rude, with her whatever the mass of her physical body is, maybe 60, 70, maybe even a bit more kilos. When there's such a person in a room, or in this case a hall, I think it was an ice hockey hall where it was last time, it just fills the whole space. It's sort of like if we think in an analogy from engines or machines, if you think that there's an ice hockey hall, and then you think that there's a turbine engine of an airplane in the middle of it, that's on full throttle. That's kind of how it is. And it's not aggressive, it's not like that, but it just fills the whole place. And that's how it is. And it is like a, when I've heard many people say this, that when they physically look at Amma, and then people just next to her, they can actually physically see how light bends differently from her physical body. It's sort of like the contrast to her body is different. The light in her is different than anybody around her. That's a really interesting thing. Have you noticed that? Those of you who have met her. And and also like it kind of feels like if I use another analogy of starry sky, you know, the sky is full of stars, and then we have pictures of black holes, and the black hole is kind of an bottomless abyss, like it is sort of like the three-dimensional space where the stars are, you know, there's nothing like that. It's sort of like this black hole is like this zero-dimensional portal to something. And that's also like when looking at her, comparing to others around her, looks like. And this is of course how Guru Yoga feels like. It's sort of like entering this uh, space where that feels very different, where things come to a stop, when confusion ceases. Um, so I've used that opportunity a lot to study my own boomi shifts. I learned the 13 boomi model from the mentioned Tirumular. Uh, Tirumular, the name itself, it's not a Sanskrit name, it's a Tamil name. Tiru means sacred or holy, and Mular means shepherd, holy shepherd. And he got that name because there is this story that you can check out of a yogi called, uh, I think it was Sundaranath. Sundaranath. So when Tirumular, he was living in Mount Kailash, now in present Tibet, long time ago, and then he was asked by Agastya to go down south and teach the Dharma. So he started a long travel, walked down south to southern India, and there something happened and he had to change his bodies. He used his yogic abilities to exit his old body, and then he entered into the body of a dead cow shepherd. And that's how he got the name, Holy Shepherd. You know, he then became a very well-known yogi and a master. And you know, this happened long time ago, but still in southern Indian temples there are statues of Tirumular. Um, so, so yeah, what was I talking about before I mentioned Tirumular?
The boomi model.
Yes, boomi model. So I got the 13 boomis from Tirumular, not a Buddhist Mahasiddha. And that's also very interesting, isn't it? So at first, when boomi openings, this awakening experience started happening to me, I didn't know what they were. My first boomi opened in November 1st, 2011, about a year after my first divorce. And then the second one opened, I think, in January 2013. So it was little over a year to the second one. And then the third one was perhaps few months after that, in early 2013. And then I kind of realized that, okay, I'm having the same experience, but just the perspective is a bit different because it's the same awakening experience, same seeing into the same nature of mind, but I just noticed that it's kind of maturation, awakenings within the already awakened state. And that's when Tirumular, in one Guru Yoga, he kind of just, you know, it's sort of like if you have you know, a sheet of paper and it's kind of like he had it all written down, like 13 boomies, and he kind of just slipped it to me, gave the paper to me, and I just understood, of course, that's how it works. And then I had more boomi openings, more awakening experiences, and the rest is history. That's what we now use in Pemako as a path map to understand that, first of all, to understand that there are many awakening experiences to the path relating to the subtle body, and that the subtle body needs to be opened up. We need to have these awakening experiences because there is no other way to become fully enlightened. There's no other way to become a Mahasiddha or a Buddha. So yeah, I got it from Tirumular originally, and then have used the same model since we switched to Buddhist Tantra in 2014, I think, with Machi Labdron first, and then with Guru Rinpoche the last 4 years, I think, something like that. 4 or 5 years, something like this. And throughout this process, I've gone to Amma to use her sort of like as a mirror, to reflect my own understanding, to those first times over 15 years ago, her presence was like completely like it felt fantastic, it felt right, it felt real, but her presence was just completely different from mine, because I still had my boomies closed. I haven't had any awakenings, and my purification process was still very, in the very early stages. So in the start, it was like going to a different planet or going to a different realm in her presence. But then that started to change in 2011, little by little. From then on, I might have had like 2 or 3 boomi openings until I could meet her again, like once a year for a couple of days. So I started noticing that, okay, little by little, my own presence is just like hers. And then last time, year ago, that threshold, that shift in her presence, it's very small. It was still there, but very small. So very small threshold. But in the beginning, it was like I said, like entering a completely different world. And so I'm really grateful from my own behalf, and I'm really grateful from my students' behalf, even if you haven't thought about this before, or I haven't discussed about it before, because she has been one of the ways that I have verified my own experiences, have verified our Pemako teachings. And maybe I'll just mention about Amma that well, she is highly appreciated in, she has gotten some, I think she was a Nobel Peace, nominated for Nobel Peace Prize, but she's also has been, she has gotten prizes and nominations for her volunteer work, which is, in some cases larger than the country of India. So she has like huge projects going on. But she also has, what is really interesting is that I've seen Christians, like Catholic Christian monks and nuns, to go her. I've seen professional Buddhist teachers go to her. I've seen different kinds of Hindu practitioners, including like sadhus and tantrics, go to her. And I've seen people from every country in the world go to her, normal people. And there are stories of, addicts going to her. There are stories of criminals going to her. There are stories of police on duty, ending up, checking out what is going on in this large public event, uh, whose life was transformed because of her presence. There are just loads of stories. So I think that that is an indication, even if we disregard, Ammas attainment in terms of boomies, that so many people have profoundly changed in her presence is an indication that, you cannot do that if you are in some heavenly samadhi. You cannot do that. And if you go and look at her and study her presence after having studied so much guru yoga with Buddhist gurus, you can instantly see that that's the same natural state. It would be absurd to claim that, well, she's just a Hindu guru who is experiencing a very powerful samadhi. What nonsense! Complete nonsense. So there's no doubt that she is authentic as a Mahasiddha. And also what is really interesting that I consider a highly miraculous sign of her attainment and her authenticity as a guru is that, she repeatedly demonstrates how she can sit there and meet thousands of people one by one, hugging each other, giving a charge to each one, without getting tired. She has done this on many occasions for a day and a half in a row without sitting up. Imagine what is the samsaric charge coming to her. How would it feel like to us if we sat down on a chair and then there would be 1,000 people in a row coming to us and we hugged everyone? A samsaric person would be completely fucked with that charge of neurosis, fear, anxiety, uh, all that, by 100th person. But she has done this. I remember there was this her 50th birthday celebration in somewhere in India. Uh, must have been like over 10 years ago. 50th or 60th, I'm not sure anymore, but a big celebration in this large sports stadium, and I think that she hugged over 50,000 people in a few days. No samsaric person would ever survive that, no matter how immersed in samadhi. That's a simple fact. And I also think that it's really notable that nobody has had a personal contact with 35 million or more people. No spiritual guru. It's completely different situation to sit on the dais, sit on the throne, and be surrounded by 10,000 people or thousands of people. It's a completely different dynamic. But when you meet and touch every one of those 10,000 people, it's a very different dynamic. Easy to understand. So, yeah, I do think that she is an authentic Mahasiddha, and everything really points to that. There are also also some. There has been a book written by her by an ex-disciple, and criticizing her and saying that she isn't authentic. Um, well, I'll just leave it. My personal experience, as well as the experience of so many others, including many of my good friends, are long-time students of hers. So uh, um, I find it suspicious when uh, when she is spoken of in a cynical way. So I have subjective experience to prove otherwise. That says otherwise. Just like I have my subjective experience of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who I've met 2 times. Like there's a lot of nonsense said about His Holiness the Dalai Lama, so my personal experience says otherwise. Um, so I guess I just wanted to um, talk about Amma for a moment, because I haven't done this before. And this winter retreat, we've had a wonderful mixture of enjoying the blessings and receiving direct introduction and empowerments from both Buddhist and Hindu masters. So I just wanted to also speak about Amma, because as you can now understand and appreciate, her role to my work as the founder of Pemako Tantra and as the head teacher of Pemako Tantra has been really significant. And I do encourage, if you haven't had the chance to uh, meet her, I highly recommend anybody to go and meet her. That's really my sincere recommendation. So thank you for listening, and hope you got something out of this. And I think we'll just meditate for 5-10 minutes and then take a break. Sitting with all sentient beings while letting body relax.